Hello and welcome to the latest installment of HFW Industry Insights, where we speak to leading figures across our core sectors about the key issues facing their businesses and the wider market. Our guest today is Rachel Barrie, the Group CEO of Global Aerospace. Global Aerospace has been providing insurance to airlines, aerospace manufacturers, private jet owners, and the entire aviation community for just over 100 years, pretty much since the inception of international commercial aviation. Rachel, welcome. Tell us about Global Aerospace and your approach to your clients in the aviation and aerospace sector.
Well, perfect. Well, thank you very much for having me, Giles. It's a pleasure to be here. Global Aerospace is a specialist aviation insurance provider backed by some of the world's foremost capital. We're headquartered here in London, but we have a network of offices across North America and mainland Europe. And we work with some of the biggest names in aviation, be it manufacturers, airlines, general aviation, service providers. We recently celebrated our centennial anniversary, which was a fantastic celebration for us. And whilst we're really proud of what we've achieved, our eyes are really fixed on the future and how we can continue to best serve our client base. So the way that we approach it is really to look at what our clients need. You know, how can we help provide innovative insurance solutions for them? You know, the aviation world is changing. The landscape is kind of evolving rapidly, day by day, year by year, and we're looking for ways to help support that, by it through supporting new technologies, beaming satellite to third world countries, providing aid and relief to those in need. It's a constantly changing environment. So what we try to do is to take the risk part away from our clients, not let them worry about that, and to let them focus on what they really need to do, which is to enable the future of aviation.
Interesting. So a lot of our viewers today will be frequent flyers. Many of them won't understand aviation insurance. How exactly do you support the aviation industry, airlines, and the other participants in the sector?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a really good question, because people don't think about the insurance when they're boarding their flight to go on their summer holidays. So what we do is to provide the risk transfer mechanism that our clients need to be able to provide the very large limits of insurance that are required in this industry to protect against catastrophic losses. We provide the insurance to allow for new technologies and innovations to come to market. And if you think about the liability limits that we provide, I mean, Giles, these run into billions of dollars. And, we cover everything in an airline policy, from a baggage claim all the way up to that fatal airline accident with 100 fatalities. It's a very broad-ranging product that we are supplying to our customers. And each of those aircraft covered under a policy has access to that limit. Each of them will carry that liability limit as they take to the skies. So without the aviation insurance, effectively, the aviation ecosystem wouldn't be able to operate, because who else could take the balance sheet risk? So they need this risk transfer mechanism to actually enable flight and aviation as a whole.
Let's talk a bit about challenges. So Global Aerospace, you have been assessing and managing risk for just over 100 years. But in very recent years, there have been some monumental challenges facing aviation and aviation insurers. We have had terrorist attacks, we've had the pandemic, we have a changing geopolitical landscape. How do you as an industry navigate those uncertainties?
One thing I have learned is that whatever happens in the world, it is going to impact aviation. So we can't get away from it. So, you're quite right, be it the terrorist attack, the pandemic, geopolitical uncertainty, all of that will have an impact on the aviation industry. And, when I think about the world today, I mean, it feels very fragile to me. We live in very uncertain geopolitical times, and managing that, both as the aviation industry and then the insurance industry, it is challenging. I mean, a quarter of the world's airspace is closed to many airline operators, either due to sanctions or security concerns. And if you picture the Middle East, there's an increasingly narrow corridor that operators can actually use. Increased risk of GPS jamming, GPS spoofing. Many operators will simply turn the GPS off rather than run the risk of being spoofed by their GPS. And it's very fluid as well. If you look at what happened with Qatari airspace recently, that was closed and open within a matter of hours. So, this is a very uncertain world that we live in. So what we have to do is to engage with our clients, have very open dialogue in what they're seeing. They're the subject matter experts here. To learn from them, hear how they're approaching these risks. And then from our point of view, we're looking at managing our accumulations, how we're analysing risk. There is a lot more scrutiny on risk profiles than we've probably ever had before, because when we're in this really uncertain world, how do you decide which risks you're going to insure and which risks you are not going to insure? You mentioned the pandemic, and that is a prime example of what can go wrong, because the real challenge is missing the thing that is going to cause the problem for the aviation industry. And the pandemic, everyone had pandemic on their risk register, but no one had a pandemic that was going to lead to a prolonged worldwide grounding of the world's entire aviation fleet. No one recognized that risk. And I think that's really the big challenge for us today. But, we're in the risk business, so we have to take that challenge. But it's a very uncertain world we live in.
Can we talk a bit about safety? So, very unfortunately, we have had some very high-profile losses recently. Is the aviation industry as safe as it ought to be? Are standards of safety as high as the public expect?
This is a really good question and a relevant question in today's environment. And, tragically, we have seen a number of high-profile fatal accidents. Obviously we had Jeju Airlines, American Airlines, and more recently Air India. And we've also had some terrible accidents, not leading to fatalities, but the Endeavour aircraft, which crash landed in Toronto Airport. We've had some significant turbulence events. And so I think public confidence is fragile when you have that backed with kind of an outage at Heathrow here in the UK, and then NATS only a couple of weeks ago. And quite rightly, questions are being asked about aviation safety and manufacturing quality and aging infrastructure. But we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that really the fatal accident rate has not increased. Whilst these accidents have made the headlines, all the statistical analysis would say the fatal accident rate has not increased. American Airlines, 5342, that was the first commercial jet mass fatality accident in the US for 15 years. Now, we shouldn't overlook public perception. It is really important that the industry responds to this, because, if you have a breakdown of public confidence, then that is obviously going to directly impact the traveling public, which the industry needs to thrive. But I do think that we need to take a step back and really think about what happens in this industry, because there's one thing that aviation, I think, is the leader in. It's the shared learnings. And all of the operators and manufacturers and service providers, they compete on every level of the business, but there's one area they don't, and that is safety. And when an event happens, everyone shares that information so that they can improve the safety of the entire industry.
People. A CEO of another insurer recently said to us that insurance is a people business. Tell us a bit about, in the aviation insurance industry, how you attract and retain talent, and is the landscape changing?
I'd completely agree. I think the business is a people business. I think that's why many of us stay for so long in the industry, because we like working with people. But the world is different now. The way that we employ, attract, retain talent is very different today than how it was done in the past. And I think fundamentally we need to look at that and have a bit of a a reset. Insurance has had a bit of a bad rap, really, from a kind of career choice, and we need to improve the image of that and make it a much more sought after career choice for people. But I do think there needs to be a bit of a reset, just in terms of expectations from both sides, the employer and the employee, about what the future looks like. I mean, what we do at Global Aerospace is we are really looking for ways to develop and retain talent in the business. So we have an extensive intern program which we run across the group. We have one here with us in London now who is developing AI code for an online tutor. In the US, we have a partnership with Embry-Riddle, and that's giving us a pipeline of talent coming into the business. We're huge advocates of the apprenticeship program, and we have a partnership with Vision Path here in the UK. So we are finding lots and lots of ways to try and attract talent to the business. And then once they're in the business, we're looking for ways to retain them. So we have, a group-wide mentoring program. And what we're just trialing at the moment is a reverse mentoring program where we're looking at next gen, mentoring people who maybe have been in the business for a little bit longer and maybe need to think differently about how they're approaching it. So I think we're working hard on attracting talent to the business. The next step is retaining that talent. So how do we retain the talent? And I think what we need to do is to be able to give the opportunities to people and recognize that talent and develop them so that they want to stay in this business.
Challenges and opportunities. So is there a biggest single challenge facing the aviation insurance industry today?
Well, I think there are many challenges facing the industry, and we've already touched on some of them. Geopolitical uncertainty, talent, retention, safety. There's a lot happening today. If I had to think about the insurance industry, I think the biggest challenge is the market faces is how to manage increasing cost of claims and within the premiums being charged. So when we think about claims, we think of them in three towers. So we have our whole claims, our liability claims, and what we call our adverse or back year developments, the deteriorations we see over time. Now, the whole claims, there's been such an advent of new technology coming into the market, the cost of repairs has increased exponentially. And you couple that with supply chain issues, which has all been linked to the pandemic going back all those years. You would have seen tariffs reported in the press almost on a daily basis, managing all of those costs. And, the industry's got a problem with talent as well. People are not going into the industry. And so we find ourselves in a situation where silly losses are happening or people don't have the resources to repair the aircraft. On the liability side of things, and you would have heard me talk about this many times, is the social inflation that we're seeing. And, we sit there and, we have our nuclear verdicts. I'm now being faced with thermonuclear verdicts. I mean, that is impossible for the business to manage. These very large.
These are thermonuclear, these are huge verdicts.
They're like excess of $100 million for, a single plaintiff. I mean, that is incredibly hard for our business to manage these very peaky single large awards. And I have a real issue with, some of these being supported through the plaintiffs through litigation funding, as an example. I mean, that is creating a lot of tension in our industry. And then lastly, we have these adverse developments, these back year deteriorations. So as a business with capital providers, it is very challenging to go to them years later, when a year has been off risk for a period of time, to say we've had this huge adverse development of several $1 million, tens, hundreds of millions of dollars. That's a very difficult conversation to have. So when I take a step back and look at the industry, I'm like, how do we get to a place where we can charge appropriately for this increase of claims activity that we're seeing within our premiums? And if we can't get our arms around this, investor confidence will fall, which means that we'll then enter a very volatile period in the aviation insurance market, which really isn't in our clients' best interests.
So a lot of challenges. Any opportunities?
Well, I'm an optimist, Giles, so I will always say there are opportunities, and I think there are huge opportunities across the industry. And the one I think that's really exciting me at the moment is around technology. And I mean that both from the aviation industry, but also from the insurance industry. So aviation continually innovating, thinking of what's next on the horizon, and we are really proud to be able to support this innovation. So we have an emerging technology underwriting department, which is looking at supporting eVTOLs, SAF, electrification of aircraft, new engine types, you name it, we're involved in that. And it's something that is so exciting to see kind of come into the market. And without the insurance, actually, a lot of these innovations aren't able to happen because they need to be that risk transfer mechanism. Within Global, we're really looking at our development predominantly around the IT sector. So, a lot of investment in our online portals, for example, data analytics, and also the use of AI. And, everyone is talking about AI at the moment, and it's definitely part of our future. I think the way we're approaching that is twofold. One, kind of the cost-benefit analysis of all these various AI projects. Secondly, kind of navigating quite a, how can I put it, the regulatory environment does not seem to have been clarified around the globe. So we find ourselves trying to navigate the different regulations, and getting some clarity on that would be really helpful. But I'm really excited about the future and just seeing what the technology is going to bring on both sides.
So moving from a corporate to a personal level, what was it that attracted you into the aviation insurance business, and why do you stay in it?
Like many people, I completely fell into this business, and then I loved it and ended up staying. So it was not my chosen career path, but I found myself in this position, and and now today I'm kind of the group chief executive for the leading aviation insurance specialist. What's attracted me to the business is I really like solving problems, and I think what we do is to, go to our clients and help them navigate challenges that they find, and how can we play our small part in making sure that they can thrive. And I really enjoy that. And I think secondly, just, I've been really fortunate in my career to travel the world, meet people, experience new cultures. And I love every moment of that. And I think that's what makes aviation so special, because it connects people.
And to you, what makes the difference for a really good CEO?
I think there's many things which make a CEO successful. I do think that you have to kind of build a good team around you. Okay? You have to listen to that team. I think you have to lead by example. Inspire trust and confidence in your team, and you shouldn't be afraid to make a decision. You have to be able to make a decision. I'm not the subject matter expert in everything our business does, so having a team around you who can help you make those decisions is really, really important. And also saying thank you goes a long way.
And do you have a proudest moment?
Look, I would say when I was appointed the group chief executive, that was my proudest moment in my career. But, I look back over my career and I've been really fortunate to experience many proud moments. I'm just thinking now, the first RFP I won, or, when I became an underwriter at Global Aerospace, or, when you kind of had a really challenging situation and you overcame that. But these days, I get a lot of satisfaction from seeing other people in my business who have challenged themselves and are at the top of their game. And, if I've been able to mentor and support them, I'm really proud of that.
Rachel, thank you very much for your time and for your thoughts today.